So step 7, we humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. If you know me, you know that I'm not asking him to remove my shortcomings, because I don't operate from a divine monotheist perspective. So if I were to reword that step from a Buddhist or agnostic atheist kind of point of view, it would be like, may the roots of my destructive patterns wither and die, and may wholesome seeds blossom and grow. Something like this. The intention behind it is the same. The intention behind it is the same, of which that I'm letting go of what no longer serves me. And, what I've established no longer serves me in the previous steps. I've put in the work, I've examined, I've investigated the ways in which I'm causing myself harm through confusion, whatever. And so now I've become ready for a new thing. And much like with addiction itself, like with addiction, if you let go of a drug addiction or work addiction or compulsive spending, whatever, there's going to be a hole. And often in your rooms, there's that joke about we're just trying to fill the God-sized hole, because it's primarily theistic, right? And of course, insert sexual innuendo jokes here. We can make all kinds of humor about that because that's often the case. People often get, or there's one joke again that says like we put down the spoon and pick up the fork. That's people get clean and sober and then eat and gain 50 pounds, whatever. Or people get clean and sober and they get into dysfunctional relationships, or people get clean and sober and they use a bunch of porn and overwork or whatever. So something's going to fill that hole. And much like with these characters, and ideally we fill that space with, new wholesome habits and behaviors. Like people take up exercise, and of course this can become an addiction. But like taking up exercise in a healthy, balanced way is a great way to spend some energy that you used to have running around chasing dope or whatever. And much like with these, and I don't like, I'll say it over and over again. I don't like the term character defects because you're not defective, you're not broken, nor am I. But I did adapt in a way to the conditions of my life that was, you could say maladaptive. But nonetheless, those adaptations were protecting me, they were serving me, they came from a place of self-love and self-protection. I became contemptuous because I believed that other people were dangerous and threatening, so I viewed them with contempt so I could feel superior and feel like I was good enough because I came from a place of low self-esteem. All these sorts of things. So realizing that these are no longer serving, and that's why that second half of the statement, and may wholesome seeds blossom and grow. Because if I look at every maladaptive pattern, there's going to be an opposite that's wholesome, very likely. Like if I look at arrogance, I could look, like what I could strive to cultivate is humility. If I have cruelty as a pattern, I could strive to cultivate compassion. In place of contempt, I can cultivate curiosity. And there are those that will totally disagree with me and say that like, yeah, no, just God, this is the part where God does it. You're taking too much responsibility, you're doing too much. This is God's job. It's just your job to ask for it to be removed. And again, in that perspective, cool, very good. This is this is what I'm working with, and makes sense to me. And in my experience, I find that there is that input. Like I do have that power over my experience. I can incline my mind towards the things in which I wish to cultivate, which I wish to develop. It's just like where I put my attention grows. If I like really spend time like looking at a picture of the Buddha, which is on my wall, just so it happens, it infuses me with wholesome qualities. If I just look at him there, and it was said that the Buddha, there's this reflection, like we look at his face, and it was so placid and calm, and it was perfectly purified, perfectly. Look at his eyes, and they were perfectly compassionate. You can see that there's nothing but love there. And we look at his feet worn from walking the roads after he got enlightened for 45 years teaching. We see his worn down feet, and we see perfect compassion. I said compassion twice. His eyes were filled with perfect wisdom. He could see everything. feet, perfect compassion. So I look at this picture, and these things start to stir in me. These things start to arise. These qualities which exist within myself: wisdom, attention, love, compassion. They arise in me as well. Purity. Or if I put my attention on pornography, my world becomes very small and constricted and filled with lust and charge. Or even just like whatever else. It's very clear that where I put my attention grows the thing which within me. So much as much as anyone who's worked the step will attest that like this is an ongoing process very often. It's an ongoing process, much as this whole recovery thing is. Because like right in the moment of having worked step 6, very likely I am ready to have these patterns changed, shifted, removed, and have something new. And then, like I go away from the retreat center, or I go away from my mentor. I come back, I go back to work and people are annoying, and I go back to school and people are difficult, and I'm out in the street and someone's screaming and whatever, and like things get difficult. So these patterns will very likely reemerge. But everyone is an opportunity to practice something different. But it's just important to remember that this isn't likely going to be a one and done situation. The awareness will come and go. And a step that, or a principle attached to this step or associated is often courage. And a question being that I just read in a lovely guide is that what risks must I take? And it might seem a little bit counterintuitive to think like, oh, like, well, of course, like, why is this even a risk? We're like having a new, wholesome, healthy, bountiful, abundant life, whatever. But like I said, like all these adaptive patterns that lived within me, they came to be out of a place of self-love and protection. They were all just parts of me that were trying to take care of myself. Like my inner critic, my inner judge, like all these parts, they were doing good work. They just adapted in a way that was also harmful. So it's real easy to fall back into that. Well, like these things protected me, so like why, like it's safe there, or it's a level of safety. It's like the devil, as they say. So it's a real courageous thing to let go of everything I've ever known, in a very real way, and to try and see the world and relate to the world and all the beings within it in a new way, from a place of compassion, of love, of equanimity, of patience, of tolerance, of care, of curiosity, of confidence, to relate to the world in these new ways is very courageous. And each moment I can return to that as an act of courage. So it will take courage to do so. I feel like I said courage about 7 times just then. And it truly is a risk, because the truth is we don't know how things will be different if we let go of these old ways of relating to the world and ourselves. We truly can't know, much as we learn from our mentors and people that have come before us. That only goes so far, and it does help to have faith in that truth. Finding people that you can relate to, like someone that had a similar problem to you that solved it through this means, or whatever means you're following, but finding someone that got through the thing and having faith that maybe it could work for you too is a very powerful thing. It served me very well. And it took a long time for me to get to that point, but it did. But the truth is, when it comes down to it, there, there might remain some doubt of like, okay, but like maybe that I'm still the one that maybe it's not going to work for me for whatever reason, right? Or maybe what's on the other side of this won't be desirable. Because there's all kinds of fears, right? Like, oh, like what if I'm like walking around all open-hearted and kind and compassionate? People are gonna like be jerks to me, like someone's gonna punch me in the face. What am I supposed to just like shake his hand, or like I'm gonna, like people are gonna be condescending to me? Should I just like smile at them? There's like all these kinds of hypothetical what ifs. I get treated this way. What if the world does this to me? What if I get like burdened with this? Yeah, it's the big unknown. It's the big unknown, and and there are no guarantees that it won't hurt. And in fact, I could probably guarantee you that it will hurt. I know for myself that opening my heart opens me to hurt as well as love and joy. But I know that closing it also removes the opportunity for all of the above as well. As much as and that's what I used to think. I used to think that hardening my heart and keeping guarded and closed and keeping people away and at a distance and only letting in people that agree with me, only letting in people that share the same beliefs and views and politics as me, so I could feel safe, so I could create my safe space. And no judgment against safe space. That's not a trash talk about safe spaces or anything like this. But in truth, like I could smaller and smaller my world. I could make my world smaller and smaller. But like I was still in there and I was still afraid. And then even then, like the people that were just like me would like start to look a little bit different. The people that were just like me, I would find something. But he's a Zen Buddhist. That's not my tradition. Like I would find things, right. So like the more I close my heart off, the more I close it off to love, and it really doesn't end up protecting me in the end, because when I'm on guard and when I'm closed, I'm just becoming more afraid and more judgmental and hurt and doing more damage to other people, and in turn that leads me to become hurt as well. And I'm acting from that place of fear and guardedness, I can lash out and cause chaos. I've had some recent instances like this myself. I was hurt by someone and I was very reactive, and I responded in the best way I could, but it was still not incredibly skillful, and I caused myself more harm because that person got triggered and that person responded in a triggered way, and it triggered me further, and there's a bunch of hurt going around. So today I believe that the safest place for me is to be open-hearted, to be acting from these wholesome places of love and compassion, trust, faith, service, courage, honesty, integrity, acceptance, hope. I think these are the real safety. If like for someone like me, it feels counterintuitive, but I think it really is the truth. That's, in fact, the only place I can be safe. In fact, the only place I can feel safe is open-hearted, because I believe that love is protective, and I know that if I'm in a place of love, like real love, not like, I'm not saying like I need a romantic thing going on, whatever, like and feeling all exuberant and excited and fantasy, not that love, but like a deep place of like love internally that's like a safety, and an ease and a peace. Coming from that place, there's been times when I'm unshakable. There's been times when confronted with things that would historically cause me all kinds of disruption and dysregulation and disturbance, I've managed them with total ease and grace, you could say. Handled them with grace and tolerance and peace, and in fact, use those difficult situations to heal relationships. So as much as those parts of myself tell me, be scared and protect yourself, there's been new experience that shows me that that love, as what as maybe cliche as that could sound, love will be the thing that can free me. And this is where some other beautiful wisdom can come in very handy. Because rather than thinking about like, okay, goddamn, I'm supposed to now live the rest of my days in this new, loving, open-hearted, hippie hugging tree kind of thing. I'm not saying that. I mean, I'm kind of saying that, but I'm not really saying that. So don't focus on that. What I'm saying is, what if the next thing you do, you try and do it from a place of love, and then the next thing, or maybe just the next thing. Like what if in this day, in this hour, in this moment, whatever, break it down as much as you need to, during this talk, you see what it feels like to live from a place of love, because that becomes manageable. Like there's another great saying in different meetings. It's like, come try 6 of our meetings, and if you want your misery back, we'll keep it here for you, and you can pick it up and head right back to where you were. Because that option's always possible. If this doesn't suit you, great, do your own thing. like some of the wisest words the Buddhists, I mean, I can't even say, I'm not wise enough to know what the wisest words of the Buddha were, to be honest. But something that rings for me is that he always said, don't take my word for it, come see for yourself. And him, as the perfectly enlightened being that was like wisdom beyond comprehension for most of us, like confused people, he said, don't take my word for it, come see for yourself. And so, I reflect that to you from a much humbler, less enlightened place. But the wisdom is so strong, like the only thing that will prove it to you is your own experience in real truth, I believe. And just a little bit about where the process, where this process goes from here. Step 6 and 7 can also often be seen as like the step you just like jump on and jump off to like the amends process. And in step 8 and 9, you go into making your list, checking it twice. Oh wait, that's right. And then going on to make amends. But having a step like living this way, living this step 7 stuff of like turning over the old patterns and developing and living in new skillful ones is so paramount. I've never had this experience, but I've heard from many people amends gone wrong. And it's, I believe, because living in old patterns, of like, wanting to go, I admit I got a problem and now I want to say I'm sorry and I'm here to help, like wanting to just like jump through the process and get into helping and stuff. I've heard people getting punched in the face making amends, being just totally torn a new one, causing new wreckage in their life. And my belief is that that's because they skipped through 6 and 7 too quickly. They didn't, in fact, weren't willing to turn over those old patterns. They were coming at it from a place of ego. And so this step is really important to not get yourself punched in the face trying to make amends. Peace.